bother. They're here.
London is rightly called the theatre capital of the world. And in this new series, we bring you the brightest, the best, and the most talked about productions in town. This week, we have more of Dame Judi Dench in A Little Night Music. Mark Rylance and Jane Horrocks talk about their controversial new Macbeth. Peter Bowles is in the studio to give us an extract from his extraordinarily powerful performance as Gangster Number One. And I'll be joined by the directors, Matthew Warchus and Ian Judge, to discuss the week's new shows. But first, we visit the Royal National Theatre, where their starry production of Stephen Sondheim's musical A Little Night Music was the week's most sumptuous opening.
He's not really in the tradition of the great American musical, the Rodgers and Hammerstein tradition. He's much more in the tradition of European theatre, where you take on, serious subjects, you characterize properly, you have grown-up dialogue and grown-up subject matter.
On Midsummer Night's Eve in Scandinavia, when the sun doesn't properly set, there is in the air a kind of erotic anticipation that's never fulfilled. So there's a great deal of flirtation and sex in the air, and this is about a group of people who respond to that, and particularly about an actress who had an affair with a lawyer many years ago. The lawyer is now remarried to a very young girl, and the actress tries to reignite the affair by inviting the lawyer, his wife, and other people involved in their lives to a weekend in the country.
It's a very good acting role, Desiree, and so that's what I latch on to. Because I'm an actress primarily, I would only have to go from an acting point of view. Finding out about that person, finding out what that person takes, finding out why they sing that, and how the story is advanced by the end of the song. Isn't it bliss? Don't you approve? One who keeps tearing around, one who can't move. Where are the clouds? Sending the clouds. She's looking back at her life and realizing that she hasn't made a coherent whole of it, that she's made a bit of a mess of it.
What was good about that was that nothing you did propelled him out of the room. You came up to him. There's a bit more confrontation on this one. You came towards him and said, well, come on, isn't it rich? What's your response then, mate? And he said,
I gotta be going.
Ta-ra, and went.
Is that better or not?
No, I
so
thought that
good?
was slightly worse.
Right. She's face to face with the person she's loved, suddenly realised that she's loved. And she's put forward a proposition which she's mistimed. And she says, isn't it extraordinary? We should be in a circus, you and I. Look at it. You're one thing, I'm the other. We never get it together. We can't. The story about not ever being able to get it together. And then he walks out on her. Don't you love farce? My fault, I fear. I thought that you'd want what I want. Sorry, my dear. But where are the clowns? Quick, send in the clowns. Don't bother. They're here.
It's a song of irony, really. It's been done many times as a sort of sentimental ballad, but it isn't. It's not even a torch song. It's actually quite an angry one, but it's a song of enormous regret and irony.
I've never directed a musical before, so in that sense, we're taking a huge risk, I suppose, allowing me to get my hands on this, because I'm just treating it as I would treat, as if I were doing The Cherry Orchard by Chekhov, for instance.
The action on the surface is just people sitting and talking and visiting each other. But what's going on underneath is a kind of complex set of regrets and desires. It's very much about desire and about frustration, also about not taking advantage of the moment. There's a character of a maid in it who is very, as Noel Coward would say, of the earth, earthy. And she has a song at the end of the show called The Miller's Son, which expresses the idea that you should just take action when you feel it. You shouldn't just sit around and talk about it.
Meanwhile, it's a rip in and a bustle and a rustle in the hay, and I'll pitch the quick fantastic with flings of confetti and my petticoats away up high. It's a very short way from the fling that's for fun to the pie pressing under the table. It's a very short day till you're stuck with just one, for it has to be done on the sly. In the meanwhile, there are mouths to be kissed before mouths to be fed, and there's many a tryst and there's many a bed. There's a lot I'll have missed, but I'll not have been dead when I die. I'm a person to celebrate every day passing by. And I shall marry the miller's son.
There are a finite number of classic musicals, maybe 8, and we could fight over which would go into the canon of classic musicals. And I think this is one of the classics of the post-war musical theatre.
With me now in the studio, two of the hottest directors in town, Matthew Warchus and Ian Judge. Matthew Warchus is one of the new wave of young theatre directors. At only 28, he has his production of Volpone playing at the National at the same time as his Henry V at the RSC Barbican. Ian Judge has directed plays and musicals for many companies, including the RSC, where his credits include The Comedy of Errors and A Christmas Carol, which reopens next month at the Barbican, as well as the current Stratford production of The Relapse. Ian, of course, you were the last to direct Little Night Music in the West End, and it was the first director, Hal Prince, who described it as whipped cream with knives. Does that still describe the show's contrasts?
I never quite understand the knives. There is a marvellous irony and cynicism to it. I had a wonderful time working on this. I believe it's a masterpiece. And if the National are to argue the point for Sondheim, I'd be the first person to cheer.
Matthew Warchus, a first reaction, is this production really as good as the reviews say?
Yes, I think it's extremely good. I think that the way that Sean and Stephen Brimson Lewis, the designer, and Nicky Gillibrand have chosen to do it, they've succeeded very well within their terms. I think they've responded to the elegance and the artistry of the work. It's an extremely high caliber piece of writing. It's very profound. I think it's very deep. It's got a lot in it. They responded to that. Perhaps I was slightly... I found that their decision meant that the production didn't always operate on a dramatic level. It was very, very strong, very powerful on mood.
I do have a problem with the stage at the Olivier. I was startled when I turned up that my ticket had Olivier written on it. I thought it was going to be at the Littleton.
The proscenium arch, the smallest
The
stage.
proscenium stage, simply because I think it's about small rooms, small spaces, bedrooms. And I felt the show was a little marooned on a lavender desert, and people were a long way from one another with big holes between them.
It is full of remarkable performances, and I think I was in awe of Patricia Hodge and in love with Judi Dench.
I would cross continents to watch Judi Dench in anything, and I was thrilled with what she did in this. I think it's a marvellous performance, and it struck me though that perhaps in another circumstance there's another Judi Dench performance of Desiree I'd like to see, one a little bit more winsome perhaps, a little more delicate. This is a marvellous barnstorming repertory actress, smoking backstage, and very funny, and I found her terrific.
Thank you both, and we'll return later to talk about Macbeth. But first, this week's news.
Alan Titchmarsh.
A very special Pebble Mill in the company of Dame Judi Dench, Sian Phillips, and other members of the cast and orchestra from one of my favourite shows. I first saw it in London in 1975. 20 years on, it's as enchanting as ever. It's set in Sweden. It's called A Little Night Music. And when I hear the opening bars of the first song, it's so easy to remember.
la, 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 la,
La 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 la. The old deserted beach that we walked, remember.
Remember the cafe in the park where we talked. Remember.
Remember the tenor on the boat that we chartered, belching the battered bride. Ah, how we laughed, ah, how we cried.
Ah, how you promised.
Now I lie, lie, that dilapidated inn. Remember, darling.
The proprietress's grin, also her glare.
The yellow gingham on the bed. Remember, darling.
And the canopy in red needing repair.
The local village dance on the green. Remember.
Remember the lady with the large tambourine. Remember.
Remember the one who played the harp in her bow and thought she was so adept.
Ah, how we laughed, ah, how we wept, ah, how we polkaed, and ah, how we slept.
How we kissed and how we clung. Remember, darling.
We were foolish, we were young, more than we knew.
Yellow gingham on the bed. Remember, darling. And the canopy in red.
Or was it blue?
The funny little games that we played. Remember.
Remember the unexpected knock of the maid. Remember.
Remember the wine that made us both rather merry and oh so very frank.
Ah, how we laughed, ah, how we drank. You acquiesced.
And the rest is a blank.
What we did with your perfume. Remember, darling.
The condition of the room when we were through. Our inventions were unique. Remember, darling.
I was limping for a week. You caught the flu. I think it was
you.
Thank you to the quintet. What music. A Little Night Music is currently playing at London's Royal National Theatre. It's a light-hearted romantic comedy described as whipped cream with knives, set at the turn of the century. And it tells of a middle-aged actress, Desiree Armfelt, who attempts to rid herself of one lover in order to marry another. The subject of Desiree's affections is Frederick Egerman, whose marriage of just 11 months to young and innocent Anne has never been consummated. Here, reflecting on the situation they find themselves in, please welcome Lawrence Guittard as Frederick and Joanna Riding as his wife Anne, and the song Now.
now as the sweet imbecilities tumble so lavishly onto her lap.
Oh, Frederick, what a day it's been. Unending dramas. Petra's brushing my hair, the doorbell.
Now, there are two possibilities. A, I could ravish her. B, I could nap.
Grumpy old Mrs. Vassar from next door. Her sister's coming round for a visit.
Say, it's a ravishment, then we see the option that follows, of course.
I do hope I'm imperious enough with the servants. I try to be, but half the time I think we're laughing at me.
A, the deployment of charm, or B, the adoption of physical force. Now B might arouse her, but let us assume I trip on my trouser leg crossing the room. Her hair getting tangled, her stays getting snapped, my nerves will be jangled, my energy sapped. Removing her clothing could take me all day, and her subsequent loathing would keep me at bay, which eliminates B and which leaves us with A.
Could you ever be that jealous of me like the Moor of Venice?
Now, insofar as approaching it, what would be festive would have its effect.
Shall I learn Italian? I think it will be amusing if the verbs aren't too irregular.
Now, there are two ways of broaching it. A, the suggestive, and B, the direct.
But then French is a much chic language. Everyone says so. Parlez-vous français?
Say that I settle on B, to wit, a charmingly lecherous mood. A, I could put on my nightshirt or sit disarmingly be in the nude. That might be effective, my body's all right, but not in perspective and not in the lights. I'm bound to be chilly and feel a buffoon, but nightshirts are silly in mid-afternoon. Which leaves the suggestive, but how to proceed? Although she gets restive, perhaps I could read. In view of her fancy for something romantic, Toussaint is too chancy and Dickens too frantic. Stendhal would ruin the plan of attack, as there isn't much blue in the red and the black. De Maupassant's candor would cause her dismay. The Brontes are grander, but not very gay. Her taste is much blander, I'm sorry to say, but as Hans Christian Andersen ever is gay. Which eliminates
Such a pretty lady, so silly.
Now, with my mental facilities partially muddied and ready to snap.
Well, I'm sure about the bracelet, but earrings. Which earrings?
Now, though there are possibilities still to be studied, I might as well nap.
Mother's rubies, the pearls will be agony. Oh, I know.
Vow as I must to adjust my original plan.
Desiree Arndale, that is no, she'll wear the most glamorous gowns.
How shall I sleep half as deep as I usually can?
Dear distinguished old Frederick.
When now I still want and or love you, now as always, now.
Welcome. The earrings go on. Welcome. I've never had anybody join me from a dressing table and a bed before. Joanna, the last time I saw you at the National before this, it was in a completely different role. You were playing Julie Jordan in Carousel.
Yes, and she's a bit of a dark horse, isn't she? And doesn't say very much, which is complete. I never shut up in this.
And Witters and Witters and Witters and Witters on. But this must be fiendishly, it's terribly complicated and difficult to do.
Well, this bit, I actually have something to say in all the mimey bits. I have a little story, which I'm not going to tell anybody. I have a little story which goes on and on and on. And so I know exactly what I'm saying when, because there's a rhythm to it. It's quite difficult to come in on the right bits.
But what's A Little Night Music all about in 15 seconds?
Oh, well, you said it's set in Sweden. It's, the sun doesn't set there, and it gives off this intense violet light that drives everyone nuts. So they run around having affairs and going quite crazy.
Quite straightforward then,
Yes.
really. Lauren,
same old story.
The same old story, going round and round. You have a long association with Little Night Music because you played in the original Broadway production, Count Carl Magnus.
Indeed.
You're now playing Frederick Egerman. You have a duet with the character you used to play. It must be fiendishly more complicated for you now, isn't it?
Don't remind me. It's also one of the hardest songs to remember, that song, the two of us. And I've completely blocked out the old words. They're gone forever. I don't want to know that I ever knew them. I don't want to think about that at all.
So are you particularly fond of this particular show?
Well, I've become fond of it. I mean, it's two absolutely extraordinary happy memories in my life. I mean, the first time, God, 1973, which was being part of creating it and making it happen for the first time. And then I left it. I never thought I'd see it again. And now to come back to it almost 25 years later, and to have a wonderful, completely different experience with another look at it. It's been great.
Was it a daunting cast for you to join China with Judi Dench, Sian Phillips, Lawrence and his long association with it? It must have been quite, oh goodness me.
To say the least, yes, quite intimidating, but it's very relaxed. A bunch of people who are very good at what they do, but want to enjoy themselves.
Having fun.
Yes.
Was the same true of the film, Lawrence? It was never released in Britain. It was released in the States, and it starred Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes.
How did you get on playing Elizabeth Taylor's lover?
Well, it was intimidating at first. My first day, I had never done a film, and my first day on the set was with her. And I was sweating so heavily that they kept having to stop and mop me off. And then, it was just a disgrace. But she proved to be, I mean, she was really wonderful. She's happy and comfortable as a worker. I don't know what her life is out away from work, but at work she's absolutely unguarded and herself. you know. So for us, it was great time.
So you did enjoy the experience?
Yes, I did.
You come back to the National yet again next Christmas, Joanna, in Guys and Dolls.
Yes, start rehearsing October, so I get a 6-week break. This goes up to the end of August. And we're at the National for 4 months with that, yeah. It's the same production that was on 12 years ago, Richard Eyre's production, more or less the same production, and I'm going to play Sarah, the Sally Army girl, which is...
So from Rodgers and Hammerstein
wonderful.
to Sondheim to Frank Lesser.
I know.
You encompass the lot. Great to talk to you both. Stay with us and enjoy the rest of the show, ladies and gentlemen, and take part in it, Lawrence, in your case. You're not done with yet. Joanna Riding, Lawrence Guitars. The lyrics and music for A Little Night Music were written by Stephen Sondheim, a man regarded as one of the most important theatrical composers and lyricists of the last 30 years, with shows like Passion, Follies and Company to his credit. I met him at the Royal National Theatre last autumn on the opening night of A Little Night Music and asked him why he felt British people had a peculiar love for his work.
I think it's about the love of language. The first good reviews I ever got were for the British production of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And I think it has to do a lot with the fact that people over here, probably through, I don't know what, maybe through training in school, perhaps theater going to Shakespeare as opposed to Neil Simon, they listen to language more carefully, I think.
This is the third of your shows that the Nationals put on.
Yes, it is, indeed. Yes. Sunday in the Park with George and Sweeney Todd.
You've described Your Little Night Music as being whipped cream with knives.
Well, yes, it's I think that phrase is Hal's, Hal Prince, who directed it originally. The songs that I wrote were too dark for Hal, and so he said he wanted to be much more schlagovers, I think is the word he actually used, whipped cream. And I said, but then it's going to be so lightweight. And he said, no, there can still be knives underneath. It may be a misquote, but the point is I've used that phrase in years subsequent to that discussion to describe what the attempt of the evening. I didn't want it to become just frivolous and sentimental, so there's a good deal of irony, and to put it immodestly, I always like it better than I think I'm going to. It's particularly true of this piece because I was so reluctant to do anything this kind of light in the first place, and I'm always surprised at how well I'm sure I'm invoking the wrath of God, but I'm sure, but I'm always surprised at how well it sort of holds up. It's a much stronger piece for something that seems to be very whipped cream than I'd remembered. I love the phrase "a little night music." I hadn't realized, for example, that serenade also means night music. I didn't realize how many words mean night music.
When you write a piece, how tightly structured is it in your mind so that when you get here and you watch this show, how much of it do you think, they shouldn't do that, I want them to do this, and how much...
Well, now, are you talking about a piece that's already been written, the way this is, or a piece that is its first time out?
When you've written it, how clear is it in your mind how it should look?
Shows should look differently. It's really it's the director and designer's vision. One of the things I enjoy is when there's a so-called reinterpretation of the work visually. This night music looks entirely different from the way Hal Prince's production did in 1973. Entirely different, which is what one of the things I like about it. If it looked like Hal's production, then it's just not as much fun.
Who do you write for?
Myself, primarily, but I write for myself as a member of the audience. I want the audience to like, or not to like, but to understand and be intrigued by something I write. But like most writers, I write something that I would like to stand in the back of the theater and watch. And I think most writers do that.
What do you think when, for instance, plays of Andrew Lloyd Webber, very popular, do you regret that your plays are not as popular in terms of bumping?
No, obviously every writer wants as wide an audience as possible, but you also want to be want to write something that you're proud of, that you want to sign your name to.
What was the first thing you wrote?
When I was 15, I had no intention of writing something like that until I was sort of, as I say, Oscar Hammerstein was sort of surrogate father after my parents got divorced when I was 10 years old, and I fell in with his family, and they had a son my age, whose son, in fact, one of whose sons is working on this show, on Night Music. And so I wanted to be like Oscar, so I wrote a musical when I was in high school, and I was sure I was going to be the first 15-year-old to have a musical on Broadway. he called me the next morning, and I'd asked him to judge it as if he didn't know me, as if it was just a script that crossed his desk. And so when I got there, and I was ready to sign the contract, he said, well, if you really want me to judge this as if I didn't know you, then I must admit this is the worst show I've ever read. And I was so startled and so upset. And he then said, it's not that it's untalented, but let me start with the first stage direction and tell you what's wrong with this. And in one afternoon, and of course when you're that age, you soak up everything. He taught me virtually everything I know about, I mean, the basics, obviously, but he essentially taught me what it was, how to tell a story, how to introduce a character, how to make a character function, how a song should be a little one-act play. And so he taught me all of that essentially in one afternoon. And they're lessons I've never forgotten. So it was one of those, you know, like Lewis Carroll telling the story to Alice Liddell. It was just one of those afternoons that changed my life.
Mm-hmm. Your first Broadway show was West Side Story, which you wrote the lyrics for. How did you come to be asked to write lyrics for?
I had been writing music and lyrics for a while and been peddling my wares around town. And I'd come to the attention of Arthur Lawrence, who had not written a musical but was a well-known playwright. And he was going to do a musical of a novel by James Cain called Serenade. And Leonard Bernstein was supposed to write the music, and Jerome Robbins was supposed to direct it, but they had dropped out of the project. So Arthur and his producers were looking for other songwriters. I came to his attention. That project never materialized because Warner Brothers did a movie of it with Mario Lanza, so it was a dead duck. However, a number of months later, I ran into Arthur at a party, and just asked him casually what he was doing. He said he was about to start a musical version of Romeo and Juliet with Leonard Bernstein. And I asked him who was doing the lyrics, and I was not fishing for a job because I consider myself a composer. And he literally smote his forehead, literally, and said, oh, we never thought of you, and we're looking for a lyric writer. Would you come and audition your stuff for Leonard Bernstein? And I was not really interested in writing lyrics, but I wanted to meet Leonard Bernstein, and it was flattering to be asked. So I did, and I was asked to do it, and I didn't want to do it, and Oscar Hammerstein persuaded me to do it.
I like to be in America, okay by me in America, everything free in America.
For a small fee in America.
Buying on credit is so nice.
One look at us and they charge twice.
I have my own washing machine.
What will you have, though, to keep clean?
Skyscrapers bloom in America. Cadillac zoom in America. Industry boom in America.
Wealth in a room in America.
Was West Side Story a tremendous learning curve? And what did you learn about lyrics from doing it?
I didn't learn anything about lyrics. What I learned a lot about music from Bernstein. I learned a great deal about libretto writing from Arthur Lawrence, who I went on and did other shows with. And I learned a great deal about the notion of choreographed action as opposed to choreography from Robbins, who is a master at that. I think Jerome Robbins is perhaps the only actual genius I'm aware of having met, by which I mean an infinite, truly infinite, never-ending flow of ideas. He is constantly inventing, and I've never come across a mind like that.
When you sit and watch a show, what for you is the moment of greatest pleasure?
Oh, what an interesting question. I think it's when I feel that a moment is fulfilled the way I'd heard it and the way I'd visualized it, and that the audience is getting it. It's very important to me, the communication between the stage and the audience. The way when you tell somebody a story, you want them to get it. Even if you tell somebody a joke, it doesn't matter whether they laugh. Did they get the joke? That's the point. And for me, that's what it's about. It's about an audience understanding what I'm doing. And then, if they approve, that's just gravy. Then that's an extra delight. But if they understand it and they don't approve, it's disappointing, but it's still in some way fulfilling. So it has to do with intention. If you get your intention across, you're more than halfway home. So that's really what it is. And then, of course, you know, if at the end of the evening you feel that they've had a wonderful time, that, of course, is the most exhilarating thing, because that means they've got it and enjoyed it.
The man who wrote the lyrics and the music for Little Night Music, Stephen Sondheim. More music now from the show's rather formidable matriarch. She's played by an actress who's one of Wales's finest exports since leaving the Swansea Valleys Her career has taken her all over the world in films and on the stage. Who better then to play Madame Armfeldt here, reminiscing about her past dalliances in the song Liaisons, than Sian Phillips.
At the palace of the Duke of Ferrara, who was prematurely deaf but a dear. At the palace of the Duke of Ferrara, I acquired some position plus a tiny titian. Liaisons, what's happened to them? Liaisons today. To see them indiscriminate women, it pains me more than I can say. The lack of taste that they display. Where is style? Where is skill? Where is forethought? Where's discretion of the heart? Where's passion in the art? Where's craft? With a smile and a will, but with more thought, I acquired a chateau extravagantly overstuffed. Too many people muddle sex with mere desire, and when emotion intervenes, the nets descend. It should on no account perplex or worse, inspire. It's but a pleasurable means to a measurable end. Why does no one comprehend? Let us hope this lunacy is just a trend. Where was I? Oh, yes. In the castle of the King of the Belgians, we would visit through a false chiffonier. In the castle of the King of the Belgians, who when things got rather touchy, needed me a duchy. Liaisons, what's happened to them? Liaisons today. Untidy. Take my daughter, I taught her, I tried my best to point the way. I even named her Desiree. In a world where the kings are employers, where the amateur prevails and delicacy fails to play. In a world where the princes are lawyers, what can anyone expect except to recollect?
Well, do you know, I think that would be one of my desert island discs.
Oh, how nice of you.
But it's so delicious. She is the ultimate courtesan. There's craft, she says.
I know.
She's been a mistress to the best in the land, from
I
dukes
know.
up to kings.
That's right, yes.
But fiendish to get your tongue round.
Yes, it is a bit, yes, yes.
What about playing, though, as you are in this show? And you're playing Judi Dench's mother. That's a bit of a knock.
No, we haven't. We have wonderful wigs.
And quite clever lighting and makeup.
Very good lighting.
What's the relationship between Madame Armfeldt and her daughter Desiree?
Well, Madame Armfeldt, as you probably gathered, has had a series of liaisons which have been very, very profitable. This has been her career. So she cannot understand how Desiree can follow her desire or her heart or whatever whim takes her. And to put it bluntly, she can't understand why Desiree gives it away for free. And they all have their slightly cockeyed idea of morality and ethics, and she really does think this is not the way to run your life, and she wants better things for her daughter.
I love Sondheim's rhymes, like the one which illustrates that point, which says, I acquired some position plus a tiny titian.
And there aren't any tiny titians. They're all that size.
Gigantic. Is it fun to do? I mean, he came, I sat behind him at a preview. I mean, it must be daunting when you have the composer and lyricist sitting out there.
Yes, it was a bit. But as Judy said at the time, you know, it's a bit like having Shakespeare there to take you through the sonnets. He took us away and gave us each at least half an hour on our solos. And that was wonderful.
Is it particularly pleasurable to do for you? Because you weren't involved in musicals, and then I remember you did Pal Joey, got rave reviews, and did that kind of make you think, oh, I could do this?
Yes, it did start a whole new branch of my career, really, which I found very, very... This is about the 5th musical I've done now, and I really love being in musicals.
As Joanna and Lawrence said, this runs till the end of August at the National. Yep. You then go on to something quite different, on your own, the hardest task of all, in a show about Marlene Dietrich.
That's right, yes, I do.
Tell me about it.
Well, it's something that, oddly enough, did begin with Pal Joey, because evidently people at the time wrote that I sounded like her, because I'd never sung before. My voice was a lot deeper then, believe it or not. I sounded a bit like Paul Robeson. They would be smoking a lot. So, which is what Marlene sounded like, rather. And my agent took this up, and Sarah Randall, my agent, has really pushed and been bullying me for about 12 years to do a show about Marlene. And I was working with Sean Matthias, who directed Little Night Music, about 3 years ago, and we were working with Pam Gems, whom I love, whose writing I love. And, you know, she wrote Piaf, among many other things. And Sarah said to me, and I said to Sean, would you ask Pam if she would consider writing a show about Marlene, a play about Marlene for me? And Sean asked her, and she said, yes, I'll think about that. And instead of thinking about it, within 3 months she had actually delivered a script.
But you see, not only do you have the voice, you also look like her.
Well, again, you know, you have to have a very good wig. You know,
Sean, you can't spend your life hiding under wigs. But you have the cheek. I mean, you have the...
Well, I can look like her, yes. Yeah.
What will it be then, the life story of Marlene?
No, not at all. No life story. The reason I'm so fascinated by it is that what Pam has written is the story of a woman on her own who is traveling the world and who is... who has to be very brave, actually. And it's just the couple of hours in the dressing room and on the stage rehearsing the show before she opens in a strange city, in this instance in Paris, with her concert. And you know, it takes a lot of nerve, actually, to travel the world on your own, which she did. And I think what Pam wrote in the end was a very amusing play, of course, and we sing about 10 songs in it. But she wrote a play about a woman who was very clever, not just a woman. She doesn't write just about the glamorous beauty. She writes about a woman who was very brainy, very clever, and very brave, too.
What was her philosophy on life?
Well, I don't know about her overall philosophy on life, but she did say to a friend of mine, to Victor Spinetti, one day in Paris, and they were sitting in her apartment, and she said she cooked. She used to love to cook for people. She was very domesticated, Marlene. She wouldn't eat herself because of getting fat. So she'd put all this wonderful food down, and Victor would eat it, and she used to like Victor, and she said, yes, she said, many men in my bedroom, very few in my kitchen.
We look forward to come back and talk to us and sing to us when you do that.
I would love to.
That'd be wonderful. And congratulations also on your nomination for an Olivier Award for Little Night Music.
Yes.
We're about to meet somebody else who's been nominated, but for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, Sian Phillips.
Thank you.
Yes, it is. It's time to meet the lady, or should I say, the dame playing Madame Armfeldt's daughter. As one of this country's few actresses to have been so honoured, those who know and work with her say she's nothing like a dame, seemingly able to take on any part. Her career credits read like a list of all that's best in theatre and film. And she's now also taking on the mantle of M in the latest Bond film, GoldenEye.
You don't like me, Bond. You don't like my methods. You think I'm an accountant. A bean counter, more interested in my numbers than your instincts.
The thought had occurred to me.
Good. Because I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur. A relic of the Cold War. Whose boyish charms, though wasted on me, obviously appeal to that young woman I sent out to evaluate you.
Point taken.
Not quite, 007. If you think for one moment I don't have the balls to send a man out to die, your instincts are dead wrong. I've no compunction about sending you to your death. But I won't do it on a whim, even with your cavalier attitude towards life.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Dame Judi Dench. Did you ever see yourself as a Bond girl?
You bet. Right from the beginning, yes.
What was
in my mind's eye, I'm this very tall, 6-foot blonde. Well, very blonde now. Very willowy girl. I wanted to be a Bond woman, we say now. We don't say girl anymore.
Oh, sorry, we're politically
correct.
No,
we have
now.
politically correct. We're all Bond women now.
What was your reaction when you were offered the part?
Oh, overexcitement. Extreme overexcitement. And my husband, Michael, even more than me. Michael was absolutely thrilled. Said, you've got to do it, you've got to do it.
Here you are. You see, there's gratitude for you. You play Shakespeare with the greatest and the best. You're in Branagh's films and a Bond film, and he's more chuffed than anything. That's
you bet.
So, it's nice to see a woman actually kind of getting the better of Bond. Did you enjoy the power of that role?
Yes, I thought it was witty and funny. And I thought it was... I mean, all the whole business about Bond is that, in a way, it's a kind of gentle send-up, isn't it? And I thought it was... I thought it was just terrifically written. And it was frightening. And they all went to Monte Carlo and to St. Petersburg. And I had 3 days in Watford.
Ah, the glamour of film.
The glamour of it.
That's what you get for working with a man whose name's Broccoli. You see, it's very down to earth. The thing that strikes me about you, Judy, is that you've always... I don't know whether you've sought out variety in what you do or whether variety sought you out, but you do seem to like doing completely different things, from sitcom to Shakespeare, from musical to film. Deliberately?
Yes, it is in a way deliberate. I mean, I don't like to be caught. I don't like to be pigeonholed. And I don't like somebody to say, that is a Shakespearean actress, or that is a situation comedy actress, or that is a... You know, I don't like that. I like to be somebody who can play as many things, and I like to push myself. I like to kind of push myself to the brink of fear, really.
Is that what makes you say yes to a part, then? The fact that you might not quite
fall
be
down
sure
the chasm. Yes.
That you might not be able to do it?
Yes, I think it is. And it's also why I don't read plays. A play is sent to me, and I kind of can't read it. There's something in me that I can't do it. So I usually get the director to come around and tell me the story over a bit of supper. And if I think the story's okay, then I'll go ahead and do it. I mean, Tony Hopkins and I, when we did Antony and Cleopatra, hadn't read the end.
Was that to maintain the excitement, really?
Yes, I suppose it was. Or fear, or whatever it is.
I did hear one lovely story connected with Shakespeare, and you must tell me it's true, because I think I was there on the night. When you... Was it your directorial debut, doing Much Ado About Nothing with Kenneth Branagh and Renaissance Theatre Company? I was there the night, I think, that you'd been damed. And I'd heard that... And
that was the first night.
He wore your damehood on his...
He didn't, but Richard Clifford did.
On his costume?
Because I had to race down the night before we dress rehearsed. It opened in Birmingham, and we dress rehearsed that night. And then I had to race down, and somebody had made me a hat. And so I got there at like 1:30 in the morning, and I put this hat on, and the hat wouldn't fit me. And so I put the hat on, which was a hat kind of like that, and suddenly it went, sprang. So that was a disaster. But then I was given my badge, and then I had to race back for the first night. And so Richard Clifford, as Don Pedro, wore this kind of, I thought, rather inferior kind of sparkly thing on. So I said, I've actually in my bag got a better one than that. So he wore it that night.
Oh, how lovely.
Just that night. Had it straight back on.
Straight back in the bag on.
Yes.
Now, talking to Sian about her musical debut, which was in Pal Joey, yours was in Cabaret as Sally Bowles in 1968, wasn't it? Was that your first musical?
Yes, it was.
And you were down to play Grisabella in Cats.
And the Gumby Cat.
Sing Memory, and the Gumby Cat. But you did your Achilles tendon in?
I did.
And it robbed you of memory? I don't mean this one, I mean the song.
Yes, and that as well.
And that as well.
It did. About a fortnight before we opened, I was rehearsing with Wayne Sleep, and I suddenly heard this huge bang. I felt as if a shire horse had kicked me in the leg, and I had completely snapped it. And if you do that, you have to go and have it operated on immediately. So I did that, and Andrew Lloyd Webber and Trevor said, we'll cancel the first night and leave it for a while. You can't play the Gumby Cat, because I couldn't do the tap dancing with all those beetles or ants. But you can still play Grisabella. It doesn't matter how clapped out she is, old cat. So, and in a plaster, that would be all right. But I went back eventually, and they delayed it, and we got to the New London Theatre, and if you remember, I'm sure there's lots of people who've seen it, there were ramps onto the stage, and I went back and walked up the ramp and fell off into the audience.
Oh, no.
So although I didn't damage myself, I damaged myself in my inside person.
What, the confidence bit?
Yes, and I knew I couldn't do it then. I knew I couldn't.
Nothing like that as in this, which is quite stunning.
I fell over on the first night of this.
Did you?
I did.
But didn't do anything to the leg?
No.
It's the wondrous role, Desiree, this amazing character who sings Send in the Clowns. It's a song that's been done so much. Is it difficult when you come to music like this to give it your own bit?
Well, you see, not many people perhaps know that Hugh Wheeler wrote the book of the play, and the play is dark, quite a dark play. It's a play where a lot of people are with their wrong partners at the beginning, and in the end, hopefully, it's going to come right. But Desiree, she mistimes her life in a way, and realizes when she re-meets the man she once had an affair with, that and had a child by, though he doesn't know that she loves him and he is the person she wants. And in this scene just before it, she says to him, she proposes really to him. She says, I know you have a wife, but I just thought that you might be in need of rescue too. And he actually says, no, I actually love my wife. And I'm sorry that I misled you.
So for her, it's the consummate tragedy of her
Very
life.
angry, hurt song.
Is it a part you enjoy playing?
Hugely. I never want to stop doing it.
I don't think I ever want to stop watching it. I've seen it a few times. It's been great to talk to you. Oh, come back once a week, will you? It's been a real pleasure.
You'll talk about plants, I will.
I'll do your gardening
yes,
problems.
Right,
You talk
that'll
to me
be
about
fine.
acting. We'll be there, won't we, really? So we'll let you go and sing. Ladies and gentlemen, Dame Judi Dench.
Thank you.
Well, as Judy joins Lauren's guitar, it's time for me to thank all my guests today and, of course, the orchestra under the direction of Mark Dorrell. It's been a treat for me, but I guess you've probably noticed that, didn't you? And I hope you've enjoyed it too. Here is the most famous song from A Little Night Music, Send in the Clowns.
Isn't it rich? Are we a pair? Me here at last on the ground, you in midair. Send in the clouds. Isn't it bliss? Don't you approve? One who keeps tearing around, one who can't move. And where are the clouds? Send in the clouds. Just when I'd start opening doors, finally knowing the one that I wanted was yours, making my entrance again with my usual flair, sure of my lines,
no one is there. Don't you love farce? My fault, I fear. I thought that you'd want what I want. Sorry, my dear. But where are the clowns? Quick, send in the clowns. Don't bother. They're here.
Desiree, I'm sorry. I should never have come. To flirt with rescue when one has no intention of being saved. Do try to forgive me.
Isn't it rich? Isn't it queer? Losing my timing this late in my career. But where are the clowns? There ought to be clowns. Well, maybe next year.
If you'd like the chance to see A Little Night Music at London's Royal National Theatre, together with overnight accommodation at a top hotel and first-class travel, start by answering this question. In which classic comedy did Judi Dench star with her husband, Michael Williams? Was it A, As Time Goes By, B, One Foot in the Grave, or C, A Fine Romance? In which classic comedy did Judi Dench star with her husband, Michael Williams? As Time Goes By, One Foot in the Grave, or A Fine Romance? If you think you know the answer, call 0894 114444. That's 0894 114444. The winner will be picked by computer and the lines stay open till midnight tonight. I'll tell you the answer and who's won